I will continue now with this third video dealing with tutorial 6 in the Expression Web textbook that revolves around this site called Welcome Aboard. I'll get my tongue untied in a minute. Welcome Aboard the Flu Bus Line. I can't even talk. And we've been working primarily on this table called Winter is Special, and this went through page 284. If you haven't completed this part, you may want to pause the video and take care of this first. Now we're going to look at some general layout information associated with the web page, and we'll tie this in with the page we have currently. I want to mention something about CSS one more time so you can get an idea of what's behind the scenes. And I'm looking at this by going to a particular website called Iron Spider. There are a lot of good ones out there, but we have something in HTML design called blocking groups of text or blocking elements. One we've already done is the tag called P for paragraph. And basically what happens with a paragraph tag in HTML, even though this is not a formal language class, it's good to know this. A paragraph automatically has a blank line in front of the paragraph and a blank line after it, so they can be separated that way in a web page. If you have something called a block quote, it makes it indented, so if you wanted to set off some text where it would look a little bit neater and stand out more, you could do that. I'm not sure if this particular example gives it to you or not. Then we have a more generic one that is called a div. DIV stands for division tag, and it has no blank lines or any kind of formatting in there. We use divs a lot in CSS designs in order to just stylize certain parts of a web page, and this is more often than not, it's associated with templates. And we'll look at some of these examples starting on page 288. Again, I hope you're doing more than just going to the brown boxes, reading directions, doing the exercise and hoping to make an A and then not know what you've done after the fact. Let's go back to the Expression web page, and this time what we'll do is get the panels back so we can display them. You've got the page up there right now, and currently we can get the panels back. Again, I wanted you to see this. I can go in and reset the current workspace to get the panels back, or we can go into that same panels menu, which many of you already have done, and you can auto hide them. You have that choice there. Now what we're going to do is add a new page to this site. In fact, it's going to generate two pages. We're going to look at a template, or just a blueprint if you please, to get this next part done. To do that, we're going to do something that I talked about not doing, but this time I'm making an exception. Normally I tell you not to use File New or File Open because that's too much like Office, and in this case I'm making an exception because we are actually adding a web page to the folder. Now, even though the book doesn't say to do this, for those of you who are very literal with directions, I'm going to go ahead and reset the workspace so you see the panels, because I want you to see the way the folders are set up. We've got the tutorial that has info new, and a lot of different parts are in there, and I want to make sure you see these. So this time what we're going to do, as in the directions on page 289, I'm going to the word File, choose the word New, and we're going to make a brand new page. I'm using not a mouse, but one of those little pads, and sometimes I'm a little bit clumsy with that, to be perfectly honest with you, so mine has a tendency to jump all over the place. So I'm going to File New. If I can scoot this over, I'm going to have to do this. I apologize, folks. I'm going to have to do this the old way here and choose New and try to get this locked in. I'll choose New and then the word Page, which if it will let me do this, there we go. Now I have the option here of doing several things. I'm going to choose CSS Layout, as the book says to do on page 289, step number 2. And when you hit CSS Layouts, you have a lot of pre-designed pages, which a lot of people will use. This is the way WordPress does basically when you're choosing one of those particular templates. And you have lots of options. You've got two columns with the left one fixed on one side, kind of like Blackboard is in a way. You've got two columns with the right side fixed. You've got three columns. You've got one where they've got the header. The word nav stands for navigation. If you had like a set of menu options that were actually links to other pages. You have a lot of possibilities here. I'm going to choose the one that the book says that's called Header, Nav, two columns, and a footer. Now when I click OK here, we're actually going to get 2 pages. I'm going to click OK, and hopefully you'll be able to see what happens, even though this screen may be tiny for video purposes. My info new is still there, but I've got one called untitled.html, which will be our standard page, and I've got one called untitled.css, and it has some pre-designed stuff there. Notice, if you will, that it's got some definitions, and we talked about this in class. For the body of the document, we have a lot of pound symbols right here for masthead, which is the banner, if you please, across the top of a web page very often. I've got top navigation, which could very well be the set of menu choices that might go to different pages in your document. Page content, the footer at the bottom, and whenever you see these little pound symbols, these are called IDs, and they're supposed to be used, these particular styles are only supposed to be used once on a web page when it's got the pound symbol in front of it. I'll go back now to the HTML document, and this may be difficult to see from where you are right now because these tracer lines will be very light colored. Now we'll go ahead and save these, and it's very important, very, very important here to make sure that these pages save in the same folder as the rest of the files that are in the tutorial. So I'm going to go to Untitled HTML, and you can either right click it or you could select it and go to File Save As. Either way is fine. I'll choose Save right here according to the directions. In fact, I did the wrong one first. I'm going to make sure, for those of you with exact wording, that I do the correct one first. They want us in step 6 to choose the untitled.css first. So I will choose that, choose Save. Now again, notice very carefully where it lands. It may be different for you personally because of where you put your tutorial file. And it asks right here to save the document as styles new .css. Be sure the CSS is spelled correctly with a dot in front of it. I'll click Save. Similarly, in the bottom box on page 289, I'll right click untitled1.html, click Save, and I'll type Layout New. Again, notice very carefully where it's saved, and if you wanted to put .html, that's perfectly fine. The important part is that you notice very carefully that over here in the folder list, you want to make sure that Styles New and Layout New are in the same folder as the info new that you had earlier. If by chance they are not there, you can do the directions on page 291, and that's only if you need to move it over there. So be absolutely sure that these folders and files are matched up properly. If not, and you don't understand it, contact someone to make sure that you do this okay. Alright, now let's go and look at the layout new.html file, and again, notice you got the little tabs up there for all of the different files that are open. Make sure you've got layout new out there, and you're looking at design view right now. There is a code view that is out there as well, and notice the little divisions are in there that I talked about earlier. So I'll go to design right here. You can right click anywhere in this window that they call it and choose page properties, and just type in the page description box the information that's on step number 3 on page 291, and it's just for informational purposes only. The flu line is the fastest and most economical. Again, I'm talking to you so you won't think that the video has died on you. Bus line on the East Coast. And in the keywords of course are there. If a person were actually looking at this site being published to the internet and they wanted this to be part of the search results, we'll type in some keywords such as flu, F-L-E-W, F-L-U-E. And notice that if they're misspelled, sometimes that happens. They've got the word, we're thinking, why would we put the flu-like sickness? It might be because someone misspells the word. We've done the same thing when we've done searches and had some of the letters backwards. And the screen will look like what's on page 292. I'll click OK, and those page properties are in place. Alright, now we have different div elements or different sections to this page, because remember earlier when we chose File New Page, and I hope I can pull this over here for you so it doesn't do all my dancing. If it fights me, I won't do it. When I choose a CSS layout that has, in this case, a header, a navigation, 2 columns, and a footer, what happens is it divides that page into different sections or divisions, the word div, D-I-V for short. So notice that. Now what I'm going to do at this point is to go to New Style, and we did this in Chapter 5, and I've still got my Layout New Page active. So what I'll do here is click on New Style, and we're more familiar, of course, with P and H1 and H2. This time we're going to choose one of the words called div. Again, be sure the dot is not there, and we have lots of these categories that I lovingly and jokingly refer to as Walmart. I'll click border right here. We're going to make the border solid. So if I click that top arrow, I can either type a number there or I can choose one of the words. So I'll choose solid right there for the border, and there's your preview down at the bottom center of the dialog box. In step number 5, for the top box border width, type in a 1, and because this has the check mark called same for all, the 1 will duplicate all the way through. For the border color, we'll choose purple, which is the next to the last one in the first row. And if you hover over it, you'll see purple, and it will put the hexadecimal code there. Again, the preview is at the bottom center of this dialog box. That should be everything. If you click OK, what will happen, the different divisions are there now. It will not look like much at this point because it looks like just 4 little boxes basically that are there. But these are the different divisions that are set up. And if I were to look at the code behind the scenes, you will see the style right here. That's called border, solid, 1 pixel in width, etc. Now again, nothing has happened yet with the CSS layout, but it will. So I'm going to go back to design, making sure that layout new.html is the one I selected. Now at the very top, by convention, the very top section of this page is called the masthead. I'm going to go ahead and show you this in another example as well. If I go into the community colleges site, clevelandcc.edu, that top section up there where it's got the logo is called the masthead, usually the label associated with or the trademark associated with the college. You may see, if it were McDonald's, you may see some golden arches there. And then the navigation bar where you got the menus and the link choices are in the next area. And then the body of the document typically is down here. Sometimes you'll have something over on the side like you have with Blackboard. Again, I want to show you this stuff so we go beyond just what the book is. If I go to Blackboard, and this is going a little slowly right now, let me see if I can get this done. In Blackboard, once I log into an account, and thank you for being patient while I show you this, you'll see a logo across the top, and again there's a navigation bar where it says faculty at Cleveland, etc. There's a navigation bar, especially when you choose one of your courses like the web class. I've got several here because of my being an instructor multiple times over multiple semesters. You'll see sometimes a navigation bar with links over on the left hand side. Again, it just depends on what particular kind of template you want to use. Alright, so I'm going to go over and find with the folder list displayed, and again, if your panels are gone, as is the case right here, go ahead and choose reset so you'll see that folder list. There should be a file that is not an HTML that's called flu logo. If you'll grab that and just drag it so that it goes in that very first section, the very first purple box, and make sure your arrow is touching that first box. When you let go, it recognizes that there's a picture there, and for the reader who may be visually challenged, we're going to type in the alternate text, flu bus line logos. It's the bus line that we're doing, and I'll click OK, and that picture will take over that first section of the template. You might notice up here in my screen, because it's touchscreen, may do some crazy stuff here because I'm trying to get some dust off of it. If I go up here to the top where it's got layout new, it will say div pound masthead, and what's happening, if I looked at the code behind the scenes there, it will say, and it may be hard for you to see in this video, it will say image alternate equals flu bus line logo. That's the name that the visually challenged person would get with the screen reader. It's got the height and the width automatically set up, and this is inside a special div tag. It's just that particular section of the website. So there it is. I'll go over to the one right below it, and again, remember that when we chose this particular template, we chose one that had header, nav, 2 columns, or 3 columns rather, 2 columns, I'm sorry, header, nav, 2 columns, and footer. We're going to take the navigation one away now, so what I'll do here is click in the second box right below this, and it will say div # top nav. Again, that's just a template that we have, and if I click on that, it will select that whole division, and we can just hit delete, and that section goes away. Alright, I'm clicking on the picture right now, and I want to show you this part with the code showing as well. When I click on this picture, it is selected. I can click anywhere in there. No matter where I click it, it will select that text. And I'm going to press the down arrow twice. When I press the down arrow, the one pointing toward me on the keyboard twice, what will happen is it will position it in another div. If I do it once, it goes to where it says div page content. If I do it again, it goes down to div footer. So I want to make sure that I'm in the correct place. I'm clicking anywhere in the footer, page 294, step number 4. I'm pressing the down arrow key one time, and that gets me in the container. If I press it one more time, I should get down here into, and I'm not sure what happened here. It should have gotten into the page content. I want to be sure. I'm real careful here because it may throw me off for a second. You want to make sure, because I've seen people make mistakes here, you want to make sure that you're inside the page content section. And that can get a little tricky sometimes. And this is where I want to be very careful that you're watching here, because you can make this mistake very easily. If I click in the box on the left hand side, it says div # left column. If I click over here on the right, it says div # page content, and then div footer. You want to be sure that you're in the one that says page content, so notice that very carefully. If it does not say div # page content, then you're in the wrong place. Be sure you are not in footer and that you're not in container. It's very important that you get this right. Alright, we've got that location marked, and what we're going to do here is to go back to our original page, Info New, and remember, having said all this, that you can always undo stuff if you have a mistake. Alright, I'm going to select the entire content of that page by doing Control and the letter A. Step 2, bottom of page 294. Control A will select everything on the page, including the table. I'll do Control C to copy it, or you can right click and choose copy. I'm now going over to the Layout New HTML page that has the logo on there. Now, my insertion point should be in this area that says page content. Make sure it is. And then do Control V, or you can right click and choose paste if you prefer. Control V will also do it, and that will copy that page in that particular location. Now, it says in the directions earlier to close Info New. You may have noticed I skipped that. The reason I didn't close this is just in case I made a mistake, I would still have it there. Bottom line, what you want to make sure has happened is that you have your logo across the top. Now again, the reason for this gap being here, remember that the way our template was, the left column is a div section, or a little location for our information. We've got div page content, which is this section right here. A little tricky to click on, but this is the section where we have the page content. I'm getting some funky stuff right now because of where I'm clicking my mouse. And then over here in this section, down here at the bottom, is the footer. So it's going to look a little quirky right now, but just make sure that you are very vigilant and careful in observing where this is. If you've got the logo here at the top, if you've got the page content right here, and I know if you click it, it's probably going to say paragraph. If you've got this navigation space right here, and if at the very bottom of the page below the table you have a footer, then you're in good shape. I would suggest, even though the book doesn't say so, I would suggest that you save it at this point, and I'm going to do that right now. Just go to File, Save, and you can do Save All, which will save everything on every page. You can do that if you like, whatever is easier for you. Alright, now that this is safely tucked away, and you want to make sure this part is very safe, if not, just let me know or let someone else know in the class. Let's just start working with the standard text. So I'm going to position the cursor at the top of the page, and even though the book says Control Home, just make sure you get down to the section that says tell them you flew here. I'm going to make sure that I've got this done. Okay, here's what's going to happen. In the very first paragraph, right above what you just copied and pasted, right above Welcome Aboard the Flew line, click right here. You want to find a paragraph space right there, and you want to type the phrase tell them, spell it correctly though, tell them you flew here. Alright, that's selected. Now, if I go to the common toolbar, and that may be a little tricky. Remember what I told you where that was before. I'll go to this style. We'll naturally want to look for the word style. It looks a little tricky. Just make sure you're inside your text somewhere. Go to the style arrow, which is the one that says paragraph, and choose heading 1. Don't make this complex, and that will be larger. I'm now going to go to Welcome Aboard the Flew bus line. Just click anywhere there in that paragraph. I'll choose that same style arrow, again step number 5 and 6 on page 295, and we'll choose heading 2 right there. Continuing on page 296, go to reserve seating. We'll do heading 3 there, again with the paragraph arrow, which is called the style arrow. Heading 3 is just a little bit smaller. Heading 1 is larger, then heading 2 is a little smaller than that. Heading 3 is a little smaller than that. We'll do the same thing for heading 3 for There's Room on the Bus. Heading 3 for Stay Connected. Again, just a design concept here for the readers. And we'll go all the way down through. There are quite a few of these titles that we have to do, and this is on the directions, step number 9 on page 296. Join the Flew Crew, heading 3. Again, hopefully this is all making sense. Hopefully this is also an easier part for you. Standby seating, again heading 3. And Flew Line Winter Specials, also heading 3. You may decide that you want to save this too. Just a reminder, every time you make an update or a change to a web page, up here on the tab it will have a little asterisk right next to the HTML, and you can always save this if you want to play it safe and not have to start all over. And you can always do Control-Z or undo to back up. Alright, let's go to the bottom of this web page, and again remember this is basically a layout that's been designed, and right below the table there's this big box, and you should see the div # footer. That's an ID tag that has one characteristic, this particular division, and I'll type in the phrase contact the Flew bus line at FLEWBUSLINES at comlink.net. That's just an email basically. We're just typing that in. This is step number 2 at the bottom of page 296. Alright, I'll select the email address flewbuslines@comlink.net. Just select that with your mouse. We've done this before. And I'll copy that email address by using the copy command or Control-C if you want to do that. And then Control-K, step 5, may be something new to you. Control-K is a shortcut to get a hyperlink. You could also right-click and choose hyperlink if you want to. Alright, in the link to bar, we're going to choose email address. Step number 6 on page 297. And for the email address, since I copied it earlier, we'll do a Control-V right there to put the email address there, and it will say mail to automatically. Click OK. And the email address now has the little hyperlink there, and it would be normally associated with whatever protocol that we have for our particular computer. And if I click just anywhere in this email address, I can click the center key, and that will center this in that division that's called the footer. And now we have that already done. You have some great suggestions on page 297 at the bottom if you wanted to choose layouts for Expression Web, and a lot of times that's the best thing to do if you're thinking, oh my gosh, how do I do a web page from scratch? You can use these suggestions about what kind of template to choose, and a lot of times that's much easier because the layout is basically set up for you. Now what's going to happen in the next video is we'll actually create a navigation bar in this little blank area in the left column that we haven't addressed yet, but I wanted to keep it just this far for right now for this video, but we'll work on this navigation bar starting on page 298 in the fourth and final video for this chapter. If you have any questions, again, please contact me.